clients are good to you, they get so much more than they asked for. The lovely thing about the beginning of the journey is that you can make mistakes if you bring that kind of spirit and try to contribute in ways that nobody else would. You know, you will shine. You have imposter syndrome. Yes, I've always felt like that. What am I doing here? I see a wave of young talent, female talent. Watch this space.
Welcome to Plymouth, Marina.
Thank you. I'm very happy and honoured. It's lovely to be here.
First of all, we'd like to talk about inspiration. Who inspired you at the start of your design journey?
So I think so many things inspire you or us. And for me, it kind of started with my mom and my dad, because we used to really spend a lot of time making things and, messing about with stuff. And my dad was an architect and my mom is a potter. So there's a lot of making at home. I think as I started to get interested in design, because I went from like, should I be an architect or when I started to find, I think one of the people that really inspired me was Paula, Scher, who I'm really happy to be partners with now.
Wow.
Nice.
Just to see a woman, and also we were talking earlier today, in this stage of life that she's at, to be such a pioneer still, and to be, have so much energy and create things which are truly new, and then everyone kind of learns from that or follows. So, but there are, we take inspiration from many things, from film, music, and writing, and all kinds of stuff. But that she's a good example of someone that not only for the work, but also for the way she is, and a female designer that really, became an icon. I think that's been incredible to see. And she's such a generous person as well.
What's it like working with a hero, though? Is it,
I think it becomes normal, but I still always tell her how, because I think she was one of the people really keen for me to become a partner. And she saw a talk that I was doing in Chicago, and her and Michael Perut came and said, "What are you doing there? You're not a partner." And it was lovely. But we have these really long meetings where partners come from all the studios, and we spend a few days discussing everything, and it becomes normal, because there are a lot of other people that are really
nice
in the group that you really, really admire, and it's mutual, and it's there's a lot of camaraderie as well. And that's an interesting thing about the Pentagram model is being able to share with a community of people, and that sometimes look at the work and think, wow, I wish I'd done that, and have that for cross-fertilization, if that's the word. Yeah, a lot of inspiration from each other and from the things that inspire each other.
So obviously Paula Scher still clearly inspires you now, but who else inspires you?
I think there are many designers that I really love the work. Many of the partners that I have are incredible. But I've always been inspired by like Polish design, and when I was growing up, also when I was starting design, Neville Brody was quite a reference, and I find it interesting how they are all different as well. I'm not like in a camp of, am I into postmodernism or classic design? I think it is whatever is relevant to the project that you're doing, as long as it's meaningful. You can design very different outcomes.
Polish design's great at the moment. We actually did a project with our studio, and we went to Gdynia. We were just really, really impressed with just their outlook and how important design is to the city and how it can change communities. And
in the 60s, they were so iconic, and especially the posters were so incredible, and the craft, because they're really artists, right? They're real artists. They're people who do everything, the illustration, the photography, whatever it's, and the typography, and it's such an incredible thing. I've got one Polish designer in my team, and she's so brilliant. And it's different to that era, but you can see that perhaps, the interest in design came early in her life.
Yeah. I was
So being surrounded. And also Czech design. There's other parts of the world, Central Europe, that were incredible. Also, I think in the 60s, there's a lot of political design, and May 68, and in France there's Grappus, and a few of those designers of the time were incredible. So, and they're now, some of them are going, and that generation is disappearing. Poland's been unlucky with many periods of history, and now it's also next door to the very difficult war, and everything affects the work that we do, as you know. You're not kind of living in isolation, and the things you choose to work, and the clients and the economy. Even here, things have changed since Brexit, and everyone's kind of feeling in different ways. So, yeah, we're not in a bubble.
No. If anything, the world's got smaller, right?
Yes.
I think, sort of macro influences like that. I think, rather than perhaps just affecting like sort of political centres, they migrate globally through social media. People get to hear and understand those stories firsthand, and sort of experience it. And it's
for good and for bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's and it's irreversible.
You were just mentioning the people in your team, and you had a Polish girl, and she was brilliant. How many people are in your team?
We are seven, I think, or maybe 8 with me. I get confused sometimes, because we lost a couple of people in the beginning of the year. It's been quite a hard year, but we have a lot of work. It's just that a lot of work that I tend to attract is for very strong social purpose, which I love. But those clients have less money and even less now. Yeah. So sometimes we're doing it almost pro bono, sometimes. So you have to combine the work and make sure, we have a bit of everything. But we had to make the team a little bit tighter, and it was hard, because the team becomes like a family, and everyone's so lovely. That's the hard side of having a business. You wish you didn't have to. But sometimes it's better for everyone. You see that they flourish and they find their path as well. It's a time when change.
Ready to go.
It's
100%.
important. Yeah, if you become too much like a family, you might not be able to let people grow as well, which I think is part of the learning and part of the journey.
I think that sort of kind of quite nicely leads us on to our next question, really, and it kind of maybe also like links to what we were talking about a minute ago about like these sort of macro political influences that affect everybody is the idea of fear, because I think fear is something that comes into design in lots of ways. I think a lot of designers experience it just basically doing their work, and is it good enough? Will they like it? Will the client like it? Will my mum like it? Will all that stuff? Does fear come in? How do you deal with it? What scares you?
I think in a bigger way, my fear is if I ever become irrelevant. I think that would be something that is scary. And I used to be so much more scared when I started, because I think we learn methods of working, and you have a strategic background, that the more you understand the problem you're trying to solve, the more you solve the problem. And when it gets to design, it designs itself.
Yeah, right.
I think that there is also understanding the relevance of choosing aesthetics that express the right, message, or the right articulate properly what you're trying to convey. So I really think, for me, what's become easier with having had more experience and being older is you can be scared that you're not like, oh my God, AI and all of that is daunting when you think about it, especially what happened in the last few months. The changes are bigger than they have ever been, I think. But just being able to work through a process that you, first is collective, you work with others, not alone. Also, you try to work very closely with whoever is your client or the task that you are trying to solve. And part is strategic, but part is really about trying to find different ways of working that are not the way everybody else. You have to find your own style of, not style as in the look, but the methods that you use. And this is part of what I'll talk in the talk today is trying to figure out what is relevant to that project and how you can create something unique for that and not for something else. And I think sometimes people just look at the aesthetics directly and then it becomes something that is replaceable very quickly. It could, you see a lot of the moment these are the colors, the moment these are the typefaces, and there's a lot of common language, and that makes you feel like you belong as a designer, but it's also very easily, you lose that very quickly. Someone else will have the same, or the client will feel the need to change because it's out of fashion soon.
Yeah, not timeless.
It's very difficult to create things that they are back to the pioneering. They're new, but also are not for the sake of it. They're responding to what. And I quite admire people that are able to sometimes create things that they are not even their taste. I can see that in some brilliant designers, because they're trying to do something that is for quite a different audience. And it's difficult because we all have aesthetic interests, and the eye, the way we see things is very important to us, isn't it?
Definitely.
And it's not easy to choose a color you hate, for example.
Yeah, right.
And you might do that because it's right for the job, I guess. And when I see that, I think, wow, that's great. And I think there is more of that in our times now, that there is a less rigid sense of what, we kind of come from a more modernist background, and the type and the composition, all of that is so important. And I can see that there's a bit of a soup going on now, and it's like the film that won the Oscar, isn't it? Everything, everywhere. I think there's a bit of that in design sometimes, and you just go, ooh, but it might be right for what it's trying to do.
There's a lot of students going to be in the audience tonight, aren't there? But the idea of fear for them is, am I going to get a job? A path for my design career that I can express myself,
as well as the
client's brief or the brief at hand.
It's daunting in the beginning, and it must be so much more now that people didn't have classes for all the period of the pandemic, and everyone became quite antisocial and awkward with each other, and I mean, everything is so much more complicated in a way, isn't it?
I think it's really tough for this group of graduates, certainly this year, because I think their A levels were in total isolation, and so was their first year, and then I think their second year was like partial,
brutal.
And then all of a sudden their third years, and I think it's really, really tough. So I think they're quite anxious about going out into the real world, and it's a big deal, isn't it?
What advice would you give yourself if you were graduating tomorrow with everything you know now?
I think now I realize that I've always been quite driven, not in that sense of wanting to compete or anything, but like passionate about what you do. And really, I think I worked really, really hard, and I still do. But when you're starting, you don't yet know how long it's going to take to get things done, and we spend nights and nights working. I'm not saying you have to do that. This generation's much more healthy, and like in terms of life balance and all of that. But I think the passion and the curiosity are the things that get you somewhere, and learning new skills all the time. And now I think it's difficult if you can't operate different. You need to create things which are moving, and you need to be able to learn a bit of code, you need to learn, jump from one thing to another, but also be able to leave all of that and go and take pictures or draw, or I think the ability to jump between platforms and methods really helps. But curiosity and being a bit fearless in that sense, because the lovely thing about the beginning of the journey is that you can make mistakes. You're not yet in charge of the project. You're not seeing the client shouting at you. You're not thinking, oh my God, I can't make a loss on this project. We need to resolve it, not continue going on and on. And when you're in the beginning, I think there's a true excitement and bringing, I remember I went to Royal College of Art, and it changed the way I worked fundamentally. I became really experimental, and thanks to some incredible teachers like Margaret Calvert, for example, who was my mentor. And I think
it's not a bad mentor.
Incredible. I mean, I'm so grateful. She kind of saw in me what I think, she said I came in, I was quite corporate, I'd been working at agencies and all of that. I came from Brazil, but she could see the potential, I guess, and she really just broke the, forget these rules, and I feel that when I came out of college, I was really inventive with wanting to experiment, and I got into a design agency, and I was working like that still, and that's how we did, for example, the branding for Tate was very much with these unusual ways of working, and you create something that is harder to replicate. And I think that period really helped me. And if you're a young a junior designer, if you bring that kind of spirit and try to contribute in ways that maybe nobody else would, you will shine. It will shine. And I see that in a lot of the interns, or a lot of the people in my team started as interns, and then I feel really proud, like Marta, the poster. Then I think the model at Pentagram, you work really closely with the partners, so it's a really good apprenticeship.
Yeah, apprenticeship. Yeah.
So you get, whichever partner you're working with, you're very, very closely connected. So you're seeing in practice someone a lot more experienced, and you can bring, ideas and not be shy about it, and we work together. So a lot of it's about character, and that character. So you're obviously a character, and you've always been like confident. Have you ever been what's the word? Kind of had imposter syndrome? Do you ever feel that? I think that the two things are the same. I think you have imposter syndrome. Yes, I've always felt like that. What am I doing here? Why? Yeah. But then at the same time, that is how. Then you have to build some kind of confidence to compensate for that. Do you think that's just the nature of being a creative person, that you kind of have those anxieties, or?
I mean, I speak to a lot. I mean, we speak to a lot of creatives, both like in Plymouth and outside of Plymouth, and I think it's a common thread. There is that, but you're right. It's how you deal with it, and as you build your experience and your expertise and your craft in your given discipline, then that's how you fight that. I think fear, right?
I think we all. I mean, I hear this from a lot of, and there's a lot of partners of ours who are incredible, and they still feel, oh, it's not that good, or too self-critical, and I think we put up a bit of a face to. Also, there is something that is nice actually. When you've been doing this for a bit, it demystifies the icons and the heroes, and everything is a job, and it's normal job like any other job, even though I think the luck that we have is that it's really fun and creative, and it is not a job in the sense that it's something you are all the time thinking about and doing, and you don't it's not a 9 to 6 job. I think for all of us, it's made your mind. And this is a good thing because you always have that if you practice your mind. But I think to me, there's the two sides of the same coin. And no, of course, but I try to laugh at it a bit, like, what am I doing here sitting here? And it's good not to take yourself too seriously because there are people who are so incredible, working at NASA. And, you need to remember there's brain surgeons and there's people, saving the planet. I saw Greta last weekend by accident.
I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah, and I thought, you see this little person here, and I wanted to just go and say, oh, God, how incredible it is that the younger generations are the people inspiring us.
Yeah, so
I think that is the
future
true inspiration. Not in a design sense, but the people who are trying to find a way out of this mess.
I hope there's people in the room tonight that will be, they'd be 20, 21, 22 years old, inspired by what you're saying, and will take that into how they think about the future. I think that there's a lot of technology, but there's something you said a minute ago about actually sometimes just stopping with the software, stopping with the computer, and picking up a pen or pencil, or kind of picking up some clay, or one of the students I was mentoring, she got herself into a real sort of quite difficult situation last week. Like, she wasn't happy with what she was doing, and she sort of just stopped and she started doing ink on water prints, just experiment. And then suddenly she had something she was just really excited about, and then she just powered from probably last Wednesday to today, just and pulled together this kind of like really amazing deck that she's going to hand in tomorrow.
That's exactly it. Is finding a different track, don't use the same track all the time.
Just unlock something in her brain.
Because you're like, oh, what typeface, or what should I draw? That's not the thing. Let's try to make something that the process might design itself, like she did. Or it could be that she didn't find the answer there, but just the fact that her mind stopped being stressed
absolutely
means that then she's got space to come up with, because we are the worst enemies, right? If you get a bit neurotic with then nothing happens. It really block the mind.
It really is kind of.
What do you think the biggest challenge will be for creatives in the future?
I think we know very little about the impact of the changes that are happening, but as AI is being able to do so much more already than, whether it's writing or creating images, it has to be the imperfection that we bring, the very unique insight. When you look at music, or the stuff that is not fabricated, the mix of styles is unusual and is in the cracks almost. And we see very funny examples of people asking, ChatGPT to write a thesis about something, and in 2 seconds you get the whole thing, and in a tone that is really comical, and now tell me in a tone that is really formal, and is insane. But if you want to write something like Joyce or whatever, and you want to create that style, not say write like Joyce, it's only, I think, that truly new perspective and unique and imperfect. I can't quite see that AI can do, but I'm not a specialist, but I'm trying to think myself, because I've been going quite away from, I am doing brands which are superb, a lot of things which use the generator and processor and this and that, but in my life, my experiments are much more tactile, or using film even, like we used to do. And then the accidents are the things, like maybe your student found, the things that are really unique. And if you don't need to know what you're going to do when you start. You just think, I'm going to work with water and in a tank, and I'm going to, do this and that. and see the reflection of it, and then you find incredible things. So sometimes defining, okay, let's do something different to what today. I'm not going to just sit and look at the screen. I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to record my steps, or I'm going, and that becomes a pattern, and then that pattern. So I think it's just, and you don't need to draw the pattern. The pattern might draw itself. So I think it's more like creating the framework, or okay, what can I do? Or even to just kind of go for a run, or go and look at, go to a museum. I mean, it can be anything, or to a market. But I think that we tend to become slaves to the desk and to the 9 to 5. And we all do, me too, because I've got all these, the emails and the nightmares that we have to deal with, right? There's clients that don't pay. There's all these things that you wish someone else would deal with, but we all have. Yeah.
I like the idea of embracing imperfection and being okay with it. The fear of failure is a big fear for a lot of people, but also if you embrace the idea of failure and use that as a learning experience, then it can lead somewhere really exciting.
So would AI kind of, can you be imperfect with that? Because the prompts that you put in, I remember us at college, we would be like pulling stuff through the photocopy, or just like holding on to it, and it was like, oh, why is this broken? But you'd be like just stretching it and taking it out and doing things like that, because you're looking for that happy accident. But now, is that harder to do for particularly students?
Yeah, because I think the idea that, the Kubrick kind of, when Hal starts to go a bit crazy, that's fiction, isn't it? I guess the imperfection would also be you dictating something. Is the dictating or
the prompts or the
to say, let's miss every other thing, but it's a bit like playing jazz, isn't it? How would you replicate that? There is a structure, and then you improvise, and you combine the improvisations, and that is unique, and you can't repeat that. And it's the contrast between structure and movement and improvise. I mean, I can't understand how you would do that, but there is probably accidental things that can happen. If you think Brian Eno, how he creates music, sometimes he would create a framework and let the thing go on its own, and it's just different, I think. It's not the same kind of.
I think the AI only works currently on prompts and not a knowledge base that has been created by human beings, but you create something unique. If you're Kubrick, so you say to AI, create a film in the style of Stanley Kubrick. Maybe it'll do it, but can it think for itself to create something as unique as creating a whole new genre of a look and a feel? Perhaps it doesn't have that creative ability now. Maybe it will have in the future. But
I guess we'll find out. Right? That's a scary thing.
I think the other side of it as well is designers are facing that challenge with technology and so on, and how you overcome that. Do you think it's any different for a designer based in a sort of provincial city like Plymouth?
So I think that, and what you're doing is brilliant, by the way. Not that I'm trying to get you to buy me a beer, but to create
it's waiting for you already.
This space where people can exchange is wonderful, and nothing replaces that. But you can work from anywhere now, and I think if the relationship you have with the methods and the inspiration are still relevant, because you can go and experiment on here and go do things outside. I think it's good to sometimes, for many people, it really works going, to an urban space like whether it's London or whichever, and getting the mixture of things that are happening, and that's really special. But it's not difficult you can do that once every few weeks or months, and spend a bit of time when we go to Paris or something like that. So I think a lot of people actually like being closer to nature. A lot of creatives, get a lot of good things from it. So I think there's no way that is right or wrong. I think if each one is that balance, that also post-pandemic, it's so challenging, everything, isn't it, to kind of find a life balance with work and find new ways of working that work for everyone. I think if it makes you happier being a bit out of the noise, that's what suits you, and I think it's completely fine to. But you can get people to come here and you can have that exchange. There's many ways of doing that. I think more than ever, it doesn't really matter where you are in terms. You could be working for Sagmeister in New York or something.
Yeah, sure.
And I met the partners last week from New York, and they were like, "Oh, I was thinking of hiring this person from London." I think because the salaries are so insane in New York with America, they're probably thinking, "What can we do?" Because it's with tech, and it's just become insane.
I like that change in some ways. I think if I grew up, when I remember growing up, and I used to live in northwest London, and it felt like London was just such a sort of vibrant, energetic place to be. And then we'd come on holiday to like the Isle of Wight or somewhere else in the country, and it would seem like you were going back like 50 years, because it really felt quite backward in the sort of provinces. But it doesn't feel like that at all now. It doesn't matter what city almost you go to.
But if you get
they have their own character.
Politics, I think, can be a bit like that still, I imagine. But it depends on where you are. I think it feels like this is quite a vibrant community. I don't know much about it, but I think, when the Brexit vote came, that division was very clear, wasn't it? And I think the more we can make equal, so you don't have to work in a big city to have access to everything. That means that also people don't feel a bit left out, because it does, it did happen, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that we couldn't work from, I remember like someone on a bike waiting for me to burn a CD.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was really stressed, and he'd just be sat there and I'd be like, oh no. And whereas now, like, you can work anywhere. Like, I've been able to move away from London to Plymouth, and, especially with the file sending, and that's happened quite a lot to people in Plymouth. I think a lot of people have come back.
It depends on where you work and everything, but I think we are all much more flexible. Our model of working still, I think, as a team, we like at least a few days being quite close and being able to work literally together. It's harder to do that, sharing from far, but it doesn't mean that you can't. And also, not everyone works so much in a team.
Have you got a hybrid model, or did you all go in every day?
No, we are hybrid.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
It's more or less
quite nice.
3 days in. And again, it's just purely because we're all working on the same projects and we exchange so much. It's harder when we're not together, but I think the couple of days that we're not in is very healthy for everyone not to commute. And in London, no one commutes for less than an hour, and everyone has to commute for an hour.
Yeah,
always. Yeah.
Whether it's and I'm lucky I cycle, but for some people they don't like cycling, and it's the tube every single day. It's quite hard. It's so tiring and busy, and we get to these formats, don't we? And then everyone's trapped in that format. It's quite crazy now when you look. We can actually try to work around things a bit more. And
And I think also, like, if you've had a couple of days off, well, not off, or you're at home and you're artworking something, or you're doing something that requires. It's not necessarily that creative. What I like with when both of us are in the studio is that it's the creative bit. I feel like we need to be together, and there's almost like things happen a lot quicker. But I don't think it's a lot harder to do that. Certainly the creative bit we find when one of us are apart, or I think it's much more interesting things happen when it's physical.
Even looking at the same screen and like moving things together.
Yeah, I agree.
What's the best project you've ever worked on? Do you have one that stands out in your mind as, God, I loved that from beginning to end?
I think in that, the way they're describing, probably the project we did for the Moholy Nagy Foundation was ideal, because meeting Moholy's family and he was someone, again, going back to the people who inspired you, who always really loved the work, and being able to use methods that were very, the way I like working, very weird and unusual. I think that was quite a dream. I had a bit of that with Tate, because I was creating installations every single day, to create projections and using mirrors and fans and water, and it was very odd. And I just joined the agent, Wolff Olins then, and they thought she's a bit, but it became quite tough, as you know. It was amazing, and it's still there, the identity. So it was a very special moment for me, because I was very new in the whole thing. But it was hard. It's really hard, because, you know, I didn't have the experience. It was so much pressure to get it right. And then there were other people working in the team. And of course, it's never, you know, and moving from that origination to then implement, I needed people with more experience. It's not, you can't do that.
Sure.
And they obviously really helped in that. But I think with Moholy, it was just us having a lot of fun, and the work came out as we wanted. There was no one kind of pushing back, and all the, oh my God, what is it going to look like when it's gigantic, when it's tiny, when it's, you know, it was quite, everyone just trusted.
There were lots of happy accidents with that, right, as well. It looks really, it's really playful, isn't it? And you know, you can, it looks, you know,
when you
fun.
have fun, I think the work looks better as well. I think it can't be a suffering kind of. I think when you're younger, if you're not careful, you can suffer a lot, because you put too much pressure on yourself, and that's the. But it's also lovely when you are, you know, just messing about, and you can work with people who are more experienced to turn that into a system that makes sense.
Someone said to me once that great work requires a great client. I think that's quite true. Because if the client can set the right tone for the project, be very clear about obviously what they want, and, you know, give a good brief and so on, but then, you know, encourage, you know, creativity, encourage positive energy through that. I think that translates into how the team and the agency or the designer kind of reacts to that, and I think that ultimately quite often will deliver great work rather than.
I completely agree. I think in every sense, like someone who believes in the process and is really engaged with it, not just, we do whatever, and also trusts you to a certain extent, don't micromanage, and then they end up designing through you, and the work doesn't really, like, it looks like a Frankenstein of, and also understand that you're trying to, you know, especially with branding, you're trying to deliver a need and a strategy. You're not just making something look red because you like red. So I think also if people are nice to you, you give a lot more. Yeah. When clients are just, you have clients sometimes they are not appreciative or can be a bit rude, or then I think you become less, you know, giving as well, because you see you're not. It's not being appreciated. So I think we always discuss those things, you know, when clients are good to you, they get so much more than they asked for. Because we all love good work, and it's in our interest that the project comes out looking amazing. No one's going to say, I'm not going to do any more work because it's good enough. No, I think everyone working in, you know, or doing good work in design would push and do much more than they were asked to do, because it's good for everyone.
You've worked on some amazing projects, which you've already mentioned. Are there any projects that another agency or person has done that you really admire, or you wish that you'd worked on?
Oh, there's a million ones, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there like
I
one in
guess you see it
particular
at
that
every
you were like,
partners
yeah,
meeting.
it's like, yeah, that's the
Yeah, I
thing.
see, I think that a lot of the partners doing amazing, work all the time.
I
I
guess
don't
you
even know where to begin. I think,
mentioned Paula Scher quite a lot. Are there any of her projects?
but there's also, Paula, I think she is so inventive with, work that she did, for example, for the public theater or the universities and the High Line. When you walk around New York, you see Paula everywhere, but they are things which are truly, they're full of character, like you're saying, both her character and the character, and type growing everywhere.
Yeah.
But then you have, I have partners like Matt Wiley, who has this, I think is the most incredible designer for publications and editorial, and also he does beautiful intros for films and series. And then you have someone like Sasha Loeb in London, who's German, very different from us, but very incredible typography. And he is also, sometimes I see the first time he's done something with type, like he did for the Bauhaus archives. And then you see that becoming like a trend, and then everyone does the same. And I was like, that's so fascinating. And a lot of, I think I see that with a lot. I just happen to be saying partners, not because I'm trying to sell. It's just close to home.
Yeah.
But, I can be fascinated by work, like I said before, by whether it's Sagmeister or Brody, in different eras in a way also. They have had their moments, I think, and sometimes, I think there's a lot of young, new generation doing incredible things, and I probably don't even know who they are, but it's lovely to see that.
That brings us on really nicely to the next question. You couldn't have done that. Yeah, you almost answered it. So each podcast, what we would do is we ask the person before if they would ask a question for the next person. So the last podcast we did was with David Pearson. We asked him to ask you a question, and that question is, if you had the chance to live and work in a different period, when and where would that be?
It's a great question, isn't it?
It's a good question.
Like you were just talking about different eras, right?
Yeah, and I think
different things.
There's two ways of responding to that. One is saying here and now, because I love being in London. I always, if anything, I didn't even dream I could be a partner at Pentagram, and I have that, very special privilege, and I have a wonderful team around me. But also when I was at Rock College, I think we were working still a lot with techniques that were pre-digital. Right. I think you were talking a bit about that as well. And we saw the change. So if I was making a film, I was making every frame in film on the light box. And it was crazy work. But using the rostrum camera and processing the film, and then you create the accidents. Yeah. When people start already in digital, they lose all of that. And I'm not saying colleges don't do that, but it's less natural. And some people have no idea how you even use a camera with film. And I think that it's a really interesting thing to have lived that transition and have the two sides of the experience. But in another more maybe philosophical way, I would have loved to have been, like we were talking about the 60s. I feel like as a person, my values and my beliefs fit a lot with the people who were doing the Polish designs and the people in Paris doing, Grapus doing the incredible things for May 68. I think there was a utopia, a belief in utopia that we lost, because the world's now like, people don't even know what to think anymore. It's difficult, isn't it, for the young generation to, luckily, like we said, there's Greta and there's people who are very young and brilliant, really going all in trying to understand how we can change things in time. But in general, I think there is a disbelief, because we're in a bit of a, and there were problems before, but I think pre-digital again, and AI, and all the things that we see, the crazy things that happened with Trump and, how algorithms decide, governments and all of how can you change that? You don't even know
where to begin.
Because that is going...
It's overwhelming, right?
It's overwhelming, and I think we lived to a time where you could have beliefs and still think you could make that change. And design had a real, role to play there. Still has a really important. But I think there was an era that that sort of rebel wanting to make change, and how that intertwined with becoming a designer and wanting to do things in a certain way, for things that were meaningful. That's why I did a lot of brands like for charities like Amnesty and Oxfam, and I was really lucky. But you kind of, I think, instinctively go for the things that you love, and they come to you as well because you make the situations happen. And as you do one and another, more of those projects come. But I think that was an era where we were right at the center of believing in change. And even Bauhaus and all of that was very much a utopian dream that tragically, ended with Nazism and all of that. But I think that the 60s were an incredible time to be young and a young adult and be part of that wave of or dream of change.
The cars were so cool as well. Right.
You can go to Cuba and see beautiful cars.
Oh man, I've been to Cuba.
It's incredible.
Jaw-dropping.
Not what you were maybe talking about in terms of cars so much, because they are older than that. But
I went to your Ferrari exhibition.
Oh, did you?
At the Design Museum with my son. My son is a real petrol head as well.
Is he? Oh.
It was stunning. I'm not trying to blow smoke here, but it was such an incredible journey. The way in which it was laid out and how you took everything from the wooden last of the car to how when they used to panel beat around the car, the metal around the wooden model, and then essentially deconstructed all the way around to like the engine and then the final car. It was just amazing.
I think that's the thing about Ferrari, isn't it? Like I'm the most unlikely person to design an exhibition like that, but once you get into the beauty of the mechanics and the making, everything is art, isn't it? And I was really lucky. That one and Kubrick were like, I don't know if I'll ever have, because that's when exhibitions were still big,
it was almost one of the first exhibitions at the Design Museum as well, wasn't it?
The new one. Well, they were the two most visited ones because I think that the subject matter is so in different ways. Really attractive to so many people. But I got to go to the Ferrari factory and everything else. And then we did Rolls Royce, which is like even more unlikely for me. But I think it's good when you work on things, unless you like something that you profoundly have a problem with. I'm not going to work for Trump or I think you need to know your line, and everyone has a different one. But things which are not your comfort zone, they're really good. And then, of course, that's where the team was incredible to bring the care and the craft to that, delivering the detail of the exhibition, the design.
How do you feel the state of the design industry is in terms of an equality of men and women or genders, and how are we doing a good job? Can we do better?
I think we're still very behind, even though I agree with you that I see a wave of young talent, female talent. I think that, and also I wrote the intro for a book of women in Latin America, women designers in Latin America. And I saw all this amazing work that I had no idea, and it was so beautiful to see. And so not just here, I think the change is happening. The difficulty is that the society is still organized in a way that men lead the world, and if you talking to business leaders, they're normally, a lot of them are men, and also women have to often stop their careers to become mums, and there's no support from the system, childcare, and there are many barriers that are really stopping women from becoming perhaps more senior in companies. And that's not in design only, it's in everything.
Yeah, right.
And I see a lot of women that went to college with me here at Royal College, and I always thought they were so much more brilliant than me and more creative, but a lot of them have slowly kind of disconnected a bit, or just have turned the design career into a side activity of being a mum. And it's not because they can't do both, it's because literally there was no support. The husband had to work, and then there's nowhere to, there's no support for childcare, and then slowly, and sometimes, it happens that then you lose your confidence, and you're out of the game for a bit, and then the game is quite aggressive. I mean, I was, sometimes you're presenting your work to CEO, and they're all men also around him, and they're really strong, and if you've not been practicing that, and even
meeting etiquette,
not you don't want to lose your shit completely, because you can, right? Sometimes you think
he loses his shit.
No.
It can be a very, if you're doing a branding for a big company or organization, it can be really hard to navigate the steps to get. I mean, you've worked in big companies, that people are not necessarily going to be on your side always. No. So there's a mixture
quite
of
often
things.
The opposite.
Yeah, which is
they're trying to trip you up.
So there's a mixture of things there which don't mean that wave of talent, I think they haven't yet been able to be reflected on all levels of business and design. So that's why we don't have more. It's changing. We're on a mission, but we should have more women designer partners at Pentagram. Definitely, it has to happen. And
do you know what the
changing.
percentage is?
Well, in London it's ridiculous. It's just me, but it's changing. So watch this space. And we've had Astrid Stavro was a partner for a period, but I think some of the challenges for her were to do with the business and having this family and everything, and the conditions that sometimes you're pushed to, and because she's obviously so talented, and but it doesn't work for everyone. It's a business model that is quite tough.
Well, I think we've got a whole community here in Plymouth that are really excited about tonight, and thank you so much for coming all the way down, and we're really excited. Thank you.
It's lovely. Very nice to chat. Thank you.